the emergence of humanity. As the elves and dwarves were establishing their alliances in the Old World, the nascent race of humans was taking its first steps towards civilization in the sun-baked southern regions. It was in the arid expanses of Nehekhara, home to nomadic desert tribes, that humanity's inaugural civilization began to coalesce. The Kingdom of Nehekhara, known to its inhabitants as the Great Land, flourished into a formidable kingdom while other human tribes remained rudimentary and untamed. Over many centuries, Nehekhara transformed from a scattering of desert tribes into a potent civilization boasting a complex religious system and an intricate governmental structure. Its small settlements burgeoned into sprawling cities, expansive road networks were laid, and fleets were constructed to facilitate connectivity between cities. The realm was governed by mighty kings who commanded disciplined armies to wage wars in their name. The most eminent of these cities was Khemri, revered as the City of Kings. The ruler of Khemri held a position of preeminence, acknowledged as the foremost among his peers. Each city in Nehekhara had its own king, yet all pledged allegiance and rendered tribute to Khemri. Expansion and conquest. Under the collective rule of these monarchs, Nehekhara extended its dominion, subjugating neighboring tribes, repelling orc invasions, and asserting control from the western deserts to the eastern Sea of Dread. In its zenith, Nehekhara's influence stretched northward to the lands that would eventually be known as the Empire, southward into the ancient jungles of the Southlands, and even eastward into the ominous Darkland. The king's legions embarked on campaigns across the globe, conquering territories and asserting Nehekhara's supremacy. Their formidable naval fleets, comprising galleys and war barques, dominated the great ocean, instilling fear and respect among all who encountered them. The accursed metropolis of Tylos emerged at the crossroads of the Arena Mountains and the Tylian Sea, founded by savage tribes of primitive humans. These wandering nomads ventured into these bountiful lands in pursuit of migrating herds of beasts they hunted and, eventually, to barter their modest goods atop a sprawling hill. Over time, this gathering spot transformed into a haven for farmers, shepherds, and artisans. As these tribes intermingled and their populations swelled, imposing stockade walls were constructed to safeguard the burgeoning settlement. Shortly thereafter, a roaming clan of dwarf prospectors and miners stumbled upon the area, quickly recognizing the wealth hidden within the mountains and earth. An alliance between the two races was forged, and with the dwarves' arrival, the city experienced rapid expansion. Wooden fortifications gave way to formidable walls of hewn stone, and log-built longhouses were replaced by towering granite structures reaching towards the heavens. Prosperity and the collaboration between humans and dwarves propelled the city to astonishing heights in terms of architecture and culture within a single human generation. The pinnacle of this city's splendor would be a magnificent bell tower, unrivaled as the tallest structure ever erected in the Old World, extending both above and below the Earth's surface. While Nehekhara thrived and its cities amassed wealth. To satisfy their ambitions, the monarchs raised armies and engaged in conflicts to demonstrate their prowess and worthiness to bear the crown of Nehekhara. For a time, this symbol of rulership over the entire Great Land passed from one conquering king to another. Dozens of rulers rose and fell during this era, their names fading into the annals of history. As the cities waged war amongst themselves, the Great Land became susceptible to invasions by hostile forces. Hordes of orcs and ferocious human tribes descended upon Nehekhara from the north, leaving a trail of death, plunder, destruction, and devastation. These invasions, coupled with ceaseless internal strife, along with years of drought that left the Great Vita River barren, exacted a heavy toll on Nehekhara. Plague and famine gripped the land, as the meager crops that survived the rampaging invaders withered in the fields due to a shortage of laborers. No single city's army, already weakened by disease, hunger, and relentless warfare, could hope to withstand the tide of invaders on its own. However, the proud and distrustful kings refused to set aside their differences, forge a lasting alliance, submit to one another, or halt their pursuit of dominance over their rivals. The first grand civilization of humanity teetered on the brink of annihilation. Unless the Nehekarans could find unity, their collective doom seemed inevitable. When Setra ascended to the throne of Khemri, he possessed an excessive vanity and demanded the worship of his subjects, but he was far from foolish. He heeded the guidance of his priests and understood that only a king who earned the favor of the gods would truly win the admiration of the people. With this in mind, Setra humbled himself before the ancient deities of Nehekhara. In a grand ritual, he implored the gods to restore Khemri to its former glory and grant him the strength to vanquish his adversaries. The very next day, the Great Vita River surged, flooding for the first time in decades. This event was interpreted as a divine sign by both the clergy and the populace, affirming Setra's divine selection. Thus, Setra became the inaugural priest-king of Khemri, a ruler who not only commanded unwavering loyalty from his subjects and legions, but also wielded the power of the gods. Setra was also an uncompromising warlord, his sharp intellect matched only by his valor and martial prowess. Methodically, he subdued the cities of Nehekhara, always leading his armies from the front lines. With each triumph, more warriors rallied to his cause. Before long, colossal legions marched at Setra's command, and the kings of Nehekhara bowed before him, pledging allegiance and acknowledging Khemri as the paramount city in the realm once more. With his rivals subdued and the great land united against invaders, the King of Kings had rekindled Nehekhara's former grandeur. However, in his hubris, under his reign, the priesthood of Nehekhara developed a similar fixation. From this obsession emerged the mortuary cult, and Nehekhara's most exceptional and potent priests were tasked by their great king to unlock the secrets of immortality and the afterlife. In their pursuit, these priests made significant discoveries and employed their abilities to extend Setra's life beyond its natural course. Nevertheless, they could merely postpone the inevitable and persisted in their futile quest. Over the years, they perfected the art of mummification to preserve corpses from decay. They harnessed the winds of magic, devising a lore of mystical incantations and rituals to bridge the chasm between life and death. They believed that with meticulous preparation and the correct invocations, the deceased could one day achieve immortality. Despite his frustration with the priest's lack of success, Setra ordered the construction of a vast burial tomb for his eventual rebirth into eternal life. Thus, when the King of Kings finally succumbed to mortality, powerful incantations were uttered over his body, and he was embalmed in an elaborate ceremony. Preserved against decay, Setra's remains were interred within a colossal sarcophagus at the heart of a majestic pyramid crafted from gleaming white stone. Following Setra's passing, the mortuary cult continued to expand in size and influence while deepening their knowledge and power. As the cult thrived, so did the necropolises of Nehekhara's rulers. Majestic tomb cities flourished alongside the living cities, growing in magnificence with each generation. Into this influential priesthood stepped Nagash, the son of King Kedep of Khemri. Fueled by pride and greed, Nagash coveted both the position of high priest and the Khemri throne, which rightfully belonged to his brother, Thutep. As Nagash's power grew, he gathered a circle of acolytes, and one fateful night, they assassinated Thutep's guards and sealed the king alive within his father's pyramid. The next morning, with blood-stained hands and his acolytes by his side, Nagash claimed the vacant throne. For the people of Nehekhara, Nagash's rule became a dark era. The usurper cared little for his subjects' welfare, desiring only to enhance his sorcerous abilities and attain immortality. Nagash experimented with forbidden magics, extending not only his own life, but also the lives of those close to him through sinister elixirs. He delved into necromancy and corrupted the rites of the mortuary cult for nefarious purposes. Malevolent creatures and undead horrors roamed the streets of Khemri at night, preying upon the living, and the winds of magic swirled ominously around the fear-ridden city. Meanwhile, in the land of Talia, the elders of Tylos had enlisted their dwarf allies to assist in constructing a colossal bell tower that would soar from the depths of the earth to stand taller than any other tower. The endeavor spanned many years, with numerous masons dedicating their lives to a tower they would never see completed. As the tower neared its finish, the dwarves encountered an obstacle: the inability to hoist the massive brass bell to the distant belfry. The elders of Tylos lamented and prayed for a solution. Their prayers appeared answered when a hooded stranger arrived in Tylos, offering to raise the bell and finish the tower. The only request made by the enigmatic stranger was to inscribe a dedication to his god upon the bell. The elders consented, and as per the stranger's wish, they left him to work in seclusion. The next morning, to the amazement of Tylos people, who were unaware of any wrongdoing, the bell tower stood complete. However, when the bell tolled for the 13th time, the skies darkened, and a rain of warpstone began to fall, contaminating the city and poisoning the land for miles around. Rich farmlands turned into fetid swamps. Terrified inhabitants of Tylos sought refuge in the dwarf mines. Overrun by loathsome vermin, the dwarves met their doom within their mines. Tylos ceased to exist, and within its bleak, distorted ruins, malevolent creatures would take refuge. In Khemri, Nagash issued a command for a colossal black pyramid to be erected in his honor. Once completed, this structure would surpass even Setra's tomb in size, and Nagash's sorcerous powers would reach unparalleled heights. The pyramid's arcane geometries would harness the winds of magic to his every beck and call. However, the exorbitant toll demanded for its construction would ultimately prove to be Nagash's downfall. Throughout Nehekhara, impoverished priest kings banded together in defiance against their tyrannical overlord, Nagash. His malevolent court and the horrors within drove them to rebellion. United in their resistance, the priest kings plotted to overthrow the despot. In response, Nagash unleashed his infernal powers to raise a legion of skeletons from the necropolis. This marked both the revelation of Nagash's true might and the first instance of the deceased walking at the command of another. The horror proved too much for many. As city after city succumbed to Nagash's power, their fallen citizens swelling the ranks of his undead legions, and their defeated monarch submitting to the great necromancer. Nevertheless, Nagash underestimated the resolve of his adversaries. A formidable coalition formed, comprising 7 kings who refused to bend the knee. Alongside these 7 kings' armies stood cohorts of animated constructs, imbued with the magic of the mortuary cult towering stone colossi inhabited by the spirits of heroic figures. With such potent allies, the army of the 7 kings triumphed over Nagash's undead hordes, slaying his most trusted acolytes. Yet Nagash himself remained elusive, escaping his foes. Fleeing from his pursuers, Nagash wandered through the desert, thirst and hunger gnawing at him. Nevertheless, the great necromancer pressed on, haunted by ominous visions. Some claim that Nagash died during his wanderings, only for the sheer force of his will to return his spirit to his desiccated corpse. Eventually, Nagash reached the banks of the Sour Sea, beneath the shadow of Cripple Peak. Millennia prior, a massive warpstone fragment had struck the mountain, causing it to split wide open. Over the years, wind and rain had caused the warpstone to permeate the land, transforming it into a wasteland where nothing natural thrived. When Nagash drank from the bitter waters of the Sour Sea, he felt revitalized. Recognizing the presence of a potent power source nearby, Nagash resolved to uncover it. For many years, Nagash lived as a recluse on the Sour Sea's banks. During the night, he visited the charnel pits of the degenerate human tribes in the region, refining his unholy spells and resurrecting the dead to serve his bidding. In time, he became revered as a god by these tribes. The wretched souls toiled ceaselessly alongside their resurrected kin, mining warpstone from beneath the mountain to fuel Nagash's insatiable hunger and constructing a mighty fortress. Cripple Peak became the epicenter of a sprawling empire, where the living and the dead alike tirelessly served their master, offering their flesh and bones to fuel Nagash's relentless obsession. In the city of Lamia, Nagash's secret allies delved into his dark arts by studying stolen tomes. Under Nagash's subtle influence, they concocted an elixir that granted them extended lifespans, great strength, and vitality, but cursed them with an insatiable thirst for the blood of the living and an aversion to sunlight. Over time, these allies grew in power and influence. Dark rumors spread, suggesting that unclean creatures stalked Lamia's streets and the dead mingled among the living. Enraged by these rumors, the priest kings of Nehekhara were drawn into a prolonged and brutal war against Lamia. Although the armies of the priest kings suffered heavily, they ultimately defeated the vampires. With Lamia's fall, surviving vampires fled north, instinctively drawn to the sanctuary of Cripple Peak. Upon their arrival at the gruesome court of the great necromancer, they were welcomed and entrusted with commanding vast undead armies, raised by Nagash in anticipation of this moment, ready to march against Nekhara's weakened forces at his command. However, Nagash had underestimated his adversaries. The conflict with Lamia had not weakened Nehekhara. Instead, it had grown more formidable under the rule of the mighty Alcadizor the Conqueror. Under his inspired leadership, Nehekhara's armies boldly confronted Nagash's legions, securing victory after victory. In defeat, the vampires fled across the desert to Cripple Peak, where they delivered the news of their failure to their master. Infuriated, Nagash resolved to eradicate all life in Nehekhara, allowing him to rule without the interference of mortals. To execute this plan, he contaminated the great Vide River with devastating contagions, poisoning the land. In a matter of weeks, those afflicted by the plague outnumbered the living, and streets overflowed with corpses as nearly 90% of the population perished. Meanwhile, Alcadizor, held captive and imprisoned as a trophy in Cripple Peak's deepest dungeon, was mysteriously freed by hooded and cloaked figures. A potent sword, crafted from pure warpstone, was placed in his hands. With sheer determination, Alcadizor summoned the strength to wield his malevolent sword and struck down the detested necromancer. Nagash roared as the dreadful blade ended his unnatural existence, and the energies of his accursed spell spiraled out of control, sweeping across Nehekhara and stirring the vast legions of the dead into a shadowy existence. Upon Nagash's demise, Alcadizor escaped from Cripple Peak, carrying with him the great necromancer's crown. His sanity shattered by the horrors he had witnessed, the once mighty king wandered aimlessly through foreign lands. Dying of hunger and thirst, he ultimately fell into the icy waters of the blighted river. Sometime later, a frozen corpse, still clutching Nagash's crown, was discovered by a shaman named Caden. As Caden wrested the crown from the dead king's icy grasp and placed it upon his own head, his mind was inundated with visions and arcane knowledge. Returning to his tribe, Caden brought forth great prophecies. He had the unknown king interred beneath a mound, atop which a temple was erected. Caden's people built their dwellings around this site, which he named Morkane. As Morkane flourished in the barren soil of the Badlands, other settlements sprouted nearby. Initially, this growth was gradual, but it accelerated as Caden's magic provided tireless labor in the form of undead armies. Thus, the realm of Strygos came into existence. Morkane's presence attracted darker entities, including the vampire Usherin, who slew Caden and claimed his throne. Under Usherin's rule, Strygos thrived until the arrival of a mighty orc, Waj, led to the sacking of Morkane and the demise of the formidable Usherin, struck down by the potent magic of a formidable orc shaman. With the destruction of Morkane, Nagash's crown was lost, and the numerous tomes of magical knowledge transcribed by Caden were scattered far and wide, carried away by those fleeing the devastation. Through forbidden necromantic arts, Nehekhara's entire populace was condemned to an undead existence. Nagash, the malevolent sorcerer, unleashed a catastrophe that annihilated all life in Nehekhara and resurrected the dead from their tombs. The Tomb Kings awoke not to the promised golden paradise, but to a ghastly reality as loathsome undead, their once grand kingdoms reduced to mere shadows. Many Tomb Kings try to reign as before, mimicking their past lives. Some, either ignorant or in denial of their undead state. A Tomb King might ask for figs and wine, heedless of their inability to consume them. Others woke to fury, finding their lands ravaged by invaders, their cities in ruins, and their wealth looted. These Tomb Kings now seek to restore their empire's glory, waging war against the living to reclaim their realm. Nehekhara's armies, led by its deceased monarchs, include courtiers, soldiers, and servants who followed their rulers in death. The leash priests, powerful wizards, and key ministers continue their rituals, reviving ancient armies. Warriors, buried alive with their kings, now rise again, armed with weapons for protection in the afterlife. Infantry, archers, and skeleton cavalry, once buried with their masters, now fight with renewed purpose. Bone giants, massive constructs of animal bones created for labor, were also resurrected, their simple magical life driving them to serve. To safeguard their master's eternal journey, the leash priests created guardian statues like tomb scorpions, ushubti, and necrosphinxes, infused with life through magical organs. These guardians, stationed within royal tombs, now join the wars at the leash priest's command. Giant birds, once sacred, were mummified and placed in royal tombs, now serving as decayed beings in the Tomb Kings' armies. Upon awakening, the Tomb Kings instructed their more sentient undead subjects to reconstruct their cities, creating everything from stone or bone due to the lack of vegetation in the land of the dead. Even gigantic catapults, hurling the heads of enemies as ammunition, were crafted to terrorize the Tomb King's adversaries, spreading fear with the haunting screams of the flying skulls. Through forbidden necromantic arts, Nehekhara's entire populace was condemned to an undead existence. Nagash, the malevolent sorcerer, unleashed a catastrophe that annihilated all life in Nehekhara and resurrected the dead from their tombs. The Tomb Kings awoke not to the promised golden paradise, but to a ghastly reality as loathsome undead, their once grand kingdoms reduced to mere shadows. Many Tomb Kings try to reign as before, mimicking their past lives. Some, either ignorant or in denial of their undead state, continue to rule as if still alive. A Tomb King might ask for figs and wine, heedless of their inability to consume them. Others woke to fury, finding their lands ravaged by invaders, their cities in ruins, and their wealth looted. These Tomb Kings now seek to restore their empire's glory, waging war against the living to reclaim their realm. Nehekhara's armies, led by its deceased monarchs, include courtiers, soldiers, and servants who followed their rulers in death. The leash priests, powerful wizards, and key ministers continue their rituals. Warriors, buried alive with their kings, now rise again, armed with weapons for protection in the afterlife. Infantry, archers, and skeleton cavalry, once buried with their masters, now fight with renewed purpose. Bone giants, massive constructs of animal bones created for labor, were also resurrected, their simple magical life driving them to serve. To safeguard their master's eternal journey, the leash priests created guardian statues like tomb scorpions, ushubti, and necrosphinxes, infused with life through magical organs. These guardians, stationed within royal tombs, now join the wars at the leash priest's command. Giant birds, once sacred, were mummified and placed in royal tombs, now serving as decayed beings in the Tomb Kings' armies. Upon awakening, the Tomb Kings instructed their more sentient undead subjects to reconstruct their cities, creating everything from stone or bone due to the lack of vegetation in the land of the dead. Even gigantic catapults, hurling the heads of enemies as ammunition, were crafted to terrorize the Tomb King's adversaries, spreading fear with the haunting screams of the flying skulls. The land of the dead. Nehekhara, known in its heyday as the Great Land for its enduring prosperity, now lies under a curse, a transformation wrought by the malevolent necromancer Nagash. This realm, while predominantly a vast expanse of sun-baked sands, is far from vacant. It stands under the dominion of the ancient Tomb Kings and their skeletal legions. Past splendor. In an era when human tribes were merely hunter-gatherers, Nehekhara approached its pinnacle. Unlike their contemporaries, who dwelled in simple shelters, Nehekhara's craftsmen built magnificent white marble pyramids and statues of their rulers and deities. The rulers of Nehekhara expanded their territories, conquering neighboring lands and accumulating wealth. This golden age saw Nehekhara's cities flourish, each extending their reach significantly. However, greed and ambition soon led to internal conflicts, escalating into widespread wars, and external threats emerged, devastating the borders of Nehekhara. Supreme monarch. Amidst this chaos, Setra ascended the throne of Khemri. He rigorously trained his army, creating an unmatched military force. Setra restored order within Nehekhara's borders, subduing rebellious kings and crushing invaders. Recognizing his might, other city rulers submitted to Setra, who promised to restore Nehekhara's former greatness. Utilizing the mortuary cult's magic, Setra prolonged his life, pursuing his ambitions relentlessly. As death approached, he demanded the cult continue their quest for immortality, and upon his demise, Setra was entombed in Khemri's Grand Pyramid to await reawakening due to Nagash's treacherous ritual. Nehekhara in conflict. Nehekhara's past military campaigns were led by its rulers at the helm of vast, disciplined legions. Spearmen in orderly rows, archers ready to unleash volleys, and swift chariots and cavalry positioned for attack exemplified Nehekhara's formidable force, overwhelming neighboring tribes. Warrior aristocracy. Nehekhara's nobility approached warfare distinctively compared to contemporary realms, where a Westerland noble might indulge in art, or a Quinella's paladin in music. A Khemrian prince trained in military strategy and chariot handling. In Nehekhara, royal women, too, were expected to lead in war, adept in martial skills. Priesthood legions. The mortuary cult's constructs, from towering Ashabti to immense necrosphinxes, marched alongside the mortal armies. As the cult's mastery over necromancy grew, they not only animated these giants, but also resurrected skeletal legions. While the cult promised eternal life to the rulers, not all promises were feasible. To safeguard their knowledge and creations, they established secret temples across Nehekhara, concealing their lore and constructs. Some temples have been discovered beyond Nehekhara, suggesting more might exist as far as Reikland, an unsettling prospect should the Tomb Kings aim to expand their reach. The Great Land. Nehekhara, once fertile and thriving, now lies desolate, its transformation a direct consequence of Nagash's dark magic. This realm, now a ghost-haunted landscape, is replete with restless spirits and elementals that haunt its mortuary temples and crypts. Their screams echo through the vast deserts, targeting treasure seekers who dare to enter. The desert's searing heat is the least of worries for travelers, as they face the poisoned blood waters of the Great Mortis River, treacherous quicksands, and devastating sandstorms. The land is scourged by whirlwinds of dust, skulls, and insects, and crawling rivers of flesh-eating beetles devour everything in their path. Bones and skulls form vast plains that suddenly animate to drag the living into sandy graves. The few oases are corrupt, offering blood instead of water, and home to monstrous beings or malevolent trees that drain life from their victims. This wilderness, with its shifting sands and changing topography, hides the Tomb King's legions, ready to be awakened by leash priests. Sandstorms reveal and then conceal monolithic statues or entire cities. The necropolises are filled with statues and sculptures, grander than anything in the old world, including towering figures of kings and gods that come to life to attack trespassers. The deep desert harbors various undead creatures. The magically tainted realm attracts foul monsters and is roamed by nomadic bandits and marauding orc tribes. Despite its barrenness, Nehekhara is far from uninhabited. The cities of Nehekhara. The once grand cities now appear lifeless, yet they hold untold secrets and dangers. Khemri, City of Kings. As the foremost city, Khemri was the seat of the greatest rulers. Filled with monuments and statues, including Setra's Grand Pyramid, it epitomizes the glory of Nehekhara's past. Numes, the Scarab City. Numas, situated where two rivers meet, is unique for still having living inhabitants. They worship Prince Tutankhamun as a deity and pledge loyalty to him, allowing him to rule over a city that once again thrives on agriculture. Xandri, Fleet Port of Terror. Xandri's harbors are the launch points for the tomb fleets, bringing terror across the seas. The city's waters are littered with sunken ships, a testament to the folly of those seeking its riches. Libarus, tomb city of Asaph. Libarus, adorned with gold and dedicated to High Queen Khalida, is known for its temples and pyramids. The city is heavily influenced by Asaph, the goddess of vengeance, with carvings of asps symbolizing her protective wrath. The Charnel Valley. This valley, lined with monumental statues, is a place of constant vigilance by the animated figures of gods and kings. The necrotex of Nehekhara labor here, maintaining and restoring these statues. Quadar, guardian of the mountains. Built into the World's Edge Mountains, Quarter's palace and temples are guarded by tomb guards. The city was once a wealthy stronghold, its architecture integrated into the mountain cliffs. Mahak, the city of decay. Mahak, a city of defiance, resisted Setra until King Fair's death. In Undeath, King Fair's fury against his successor's capitulation to Setra led him to desecrate their tombs. Transformed from the life-sustaining Vide River, the Great Mortis River now flows with dark, poisonous water, corrupting the land and bringing death, a grim testament to the pervasive decay of Nehekhara. Setra's wrath. Retribution is a deed shared among peers yet. Therefore, when he marched his Nakaran legions into the fledgling realm of Britannia, it wasn't a quest for revenge against a foe, but rather the subjugation of a defiant lesser by a despot. Setra's anger was dual in nature. The Britannian knights not only pillaged his ancient land, filling their packs with its wealth, but also slew King Septa the Everlasting, a commander deeply esteemed by Setra. Fixating on Britannia, Setra ordered Xandri's harbor to ready his naval fleet for the perilous journey through the Black Gulf, and his armies to rise from their sandy graves. Around the clock, his immense undead workforce toiled, their supernatural endurance negating the need for sustenance or rest, while Setra's immense legions stood still at the docks, awaiting embarkation on the newly built and refurbished ships. Setra's strategy was straightforward. Opting against a lengthy sea voyage through potentially hostile waters, he planned to subdue the fragmented territories, now called the Border Princes, establishing a base in the Old World. From these newly conquered strongholds, he intended to traverse the vaults and begin his attack on Britannia's southern regions. He entrusted his vanguard to Tolathor the Luminous, a fierce, merciless tomb prince who had previously overseen his vast naval forces. Tolathor's goal was direct and savage: seize the towns of Kasos and Thessos, driving hordes of terrorized refugees before him, spreading panic across the Border Princes. The prince would then rendezvous with Setra for the onslaught on Mataria. However, Tolathor encountered unexpected robust resistance in the Border Princes, as the region boasted valiant defenders. Notable mercenary leaders had swiftly gathered at Kasos and Thessos, determined to shield these vital centers of civilization from the looming threat. Each leader brought disciplined, battle-tested troops from their retinues, bolstered by a multitude of skilled, well-compensated mercenary units. Despite these seasoned forces and their adept commanders, the sheer power of Nehekhara prevailed, and both towns succumbed swiftly, their protectors defeated, the survivors fleeing in sheer dread across the Border Princes. While the majority of Setra's army prepared for embarkation in Xandri, another Nehekharan faction had a different mission. Setra commanded the leash priests of the mortuary cult to track Septa the Everlasting to the Badlands, where he had chased the Britannian knights, retrieve his remains, and resurrect him, assigning him to oversee the treacherous priests. Once Septa was revived and in command, they were to besiege the Myrmidia citadel and the dwarfish stronghold of Barak Var, cutting off potential support to Mataria. The mortuary cult's priests, while obedient, pursued their own agendas first. Beyond Nehekhara lay numerous ancient sacred sites to the cult. Among these, the priests most coveted the dormant colossal constructs housed in hidden temples, living statues of old deities awaiting reawakening. The priests visited these secret locations, chanting spells to rouse these slumbering giants. Massive scorpions emerged from the sands, giant necrosphinxes shook off centuries of dust, and ranks of Ushabti awoke, all ready to battle under the mortuary cult's command. Strengthened, they marched towards the Badlands, searching for Septa's last battleground. High in the Dragonback Mountains, they found Septa's warriors, but not the king himself. Hierophant Ashurtak, wary of angering Setra, split his forces, scouring every nook for Septa. His gaze turned to the elvish tower of Tor and Rock, suspecting elven involvement in Septa's downfall, and led his forces against it, determined to exact vengeance or uncover the truth. The Tor Unrock carnage. As the mortuary cult's legions neared the elvish tower, nearby residents fled to Tor Anrock, seeking refuge. The elven defenders, clad in shining armor and armed with renowned Lothern Sea Guard weapons, prepared for battle. Ashurtak approached alone, offering terms: return Septa's body for peace or face total annihilation. The elves denied having Septa, prompting Ashurtak to signal the attack. The elven archers rained arrows on the approaching army, while bolt throwers targeted the advancing Necrosphinx and Necrolith Colossus. Unnoticed, scarabs and subterranean creatures emerged behind the elven lines, causing havoc. Amidst the chaos, Prince Apophas, the cursed scarab lord, assassinated the elven commander. Overwhelmed, the elves were buried alive, leaving Tor Anrock eerily silent as the leash priests searched in vain for Septa. Unforeseen foes. With no trace of Septa, Ashurtak led his forces towards Myrmidia Citadel and Barak Var, leaving behind a trail of devastation. However, orc and goblin tribes, alerted by the smoke, began relentless attacks on the advancing army. Frustrated, Ashurtak sought to draw the orcs into open battle, challenging the local warlord. The orc raids ceased, heralding an impending massive attack. A huge orc force, led by a formidable war boss carrying Septa's body, descended from the mountains. The Nehekaran army, including colossal constructs. The war boss's appearance with Septa's body galvanized Ashurtak, who knew reclaiming it was crucial for Setra's plan. The battle ensued, with the orcs charging fiercely. The war boss, towering above his kin, sought to confront the Nehekaran forces head-on. Amidst the battle, Ashurtak focused on recapturing Septa's remains, setting the stage for a decisive confrontation that would shape the fate of both armies and their leaders, kingdom's warriors under royal command. Throughout Nehekara's storied past, its sovereigns, with Setra leading, have persistently invaded neighboring territories, extending their rule over diverse landscapes, from modest agricultural settlements to strongly fortified towns. These battle-hungry rulers, when embarking on their campaigns, were not just supported by vast armies of ordinary foot soldiers, but by exceptionally formidable warriors. Ascendancy and dominion. From its early days as a rising nation, Nehekara rapidly evolved into a formidable power. Ruling over these influential cities were esteemed monarchs, exercising unchallenged control, their desires and demands readily fulfilled. To protect their flourishing homes from the savage tribes nearby, extensive armies were mobilized. Soon, Nehekara's influence spanned from sea to sea and into distant land. Despite their substantial wealth and dominance, the land's rulers yearned for more, leading them to conflict among themselves, each aspiring to be the undisputed sovereign of this vast territory. This internal conflict lasted centuries, leaving Nehekara's borders vulnerable as its leaders focused inward. This situation led to foreign invaders wreaking havoc across the land, unchecked and unopposed. However, this period of self-destructive warfare and rampant invasions abruptly ceased with Setra's rise to power in Khemri, the most prominent of Nehekara's cities. Setting the standard. Under Setra, Khemri's military underwent significant transformation, rigorously training to meet the king's high expectations. Spearmen, in tight formations, practiced maneuvers tirelessly, while archers in the ranks were expected to maintain consistent firing rates in sync with their marching peers. Chariots and cavalry performed intricate drills under close scrutiny. Those failing to meet these standards faced harsh consequences. Inadequate archers were abandoned, and cavalrymen unable to navigate the dangers of chariot combat were mercilessly eliminated. The elite who met these standards joined Setra's royal host, fighting alongside the king. In a few years, this pursuit of excellence turned Khemri's forces into the most formidable in the land. Setra's elite troops quickly subdued other monarchs, who then adopted his rigorous training methods, establishing the royal hosts of Nehekara as a symbol of ruthless efficiency and discipline. Sacred military orders. The mortuary cult, long studying eternal life and resurrection, held a privileged and influential position in Khemri and beyond. While their primary focus was on discovering the secrets of everlasting youth, they occasionally led forces to ancient temples in their quest for this power. The ultimate deception. The rulers of Nehera always coveted eternal life alongside wealth and power. Despite Setra's might, he could not escape time's grasp. Thus, the mortuary cult's role was to eventually resurrect these monarchs. The priests tirelessly passed down their knowledge until they mastered binding souls to their bodies. However, as they neared their goal, Nehekhara plunged into darkness with the rise of the great necromancer Nagash, who dominated the region with an army of skeletal warriors. After enduring his tyranny, the living rulers and the mortuary cult allied to overthrow him. They emerged victorious, driving Nagash into exile. Strategic preparations of the cult. Determined not to be caught off guard again, the mortuary cult devised a strategy. They concealed their stone constructs in secret temples across and beyond Nehekhara. This ensured a widespread military presence, ready to defend against intruders or to further the high priest's ambitions. Some constructs, like the necroserpents and tomb scorpions, remained active, guarding these sites and eliminating any who discovered them. Prince Apophas, the cursed scarab lord. Prince Apophas, consumed by envy towards his father's reign and a strong desire for the throne, committed a heinous act by assassinating his entire royal family and declaring himself ruler. However, in Nakahara, regicide was deemed the utmost sin. The people of Numas, outraged, subjected the prince to a dreadful punishment at the temple of Usirian, the Nehekaran deity of the underworld. Encased alive in a sarcophagus teeming with flesh-eating scarabs, Apophas' pleas fell on deaf ears. When the tomb was opened days later, only his fleshless skull remained. This skull, marked with a hieroglyph signifying his crime, was cast into the desert. As his soul neared eternal oblivion, Usirian claimed it, intending eternal torment for his crime. However, a bargain was struck, and Apophas was reborn as the cursed scarab lord. Transforming into a swarm of scarabs, he re-emerges as a skeletal figure, clutching the same weapon used in his treacherous act. Haunted by his crime, Apophas is condemned to eternally seek a soul that matches his, a quest that is, unbeknownst to him, futile. Nekaf, Setra's trusted envoy. Among Setra's many devoted followers, Nekaf stood out as his most trusted. Following Setra into death, Nekaf was first to rise alongside his king in the afterlife. Known for his formidable stature, unmatched strength, and absolute loyalty, Nekaf was unparalleled in combat, renowned for his ability to overpower any adversary with ease. As Setra's emissary, Nekaf was not only a fearsome warrior, but also a shrewd diplomat, representing his lord in political matters and delivering judgments. His primary role was to announce Setra's presence, a task that took hours due to the king's extensive list of accomplishments. In death, Nekaf leads Setra's forces, delivering ultimatums to enemy rulers with a powerful mental voice. In battle, he unleashes devastating attacks with his enchanted flail, mercilessly punishing any resistance to Setra's dominion. If you enjoyed watching this video and found it helpful or entertaining, please give it a big thumbs up and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you don't want to miss out on our upcoming content, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.